Hi, it's Kayce with Training with Kayce, and let's talk about traits required for outstanding trainers. So, if you want to be a really good trainer, there are some skills that are sometimes in short supply, but you can develop many of them, but you need to work at it. So, why do you need to work at it? Well, if you're going to study with one of these people, if you're going to put yourself or your animal under their influence, you must be a dynamic, active part of the process. You can't even find a great doctor just from his credentials or from her credentials. You need to read the reviews, meet the person, review their credentials and their record. There's a huge suit going on here. Hundreds of women received fraudulent surgeries from a single doctor at one of the hospitals. And it's now over 200 women that are suing the hospital, which had been warned by various other hospital staff. You need to get out there and do due diligence before you go let somebody put a scalpel on you. It seems like a good idea to me. Maybe I'm just, yeah. Okay, so yet another problem. I'm an exotic animal trainer. You know how many degrees there are for that? Yeah, I haven't seen one either. I know a lot of outstanding trainers. I don't actually know very many that have any kind of degree and in training, right? They might have a degree in psychology or a degree in biology or whatever, but they very seldom have a degree in exotic animal training. Ironically, a few that I know that do specifically have a degree in exotic animal training, I don't respect the institution that credentialed. Okay. Now that's me. I happen to know the institution and their history and their practices, not looking for a fight, but just because they have a credential doesn't mean that they're going to be outstanding. So you simply must learn how to assess people. So to assess animals for training, to teach animals, to teach people, to influence people and animals, I think it really helps to have four critical skills. So let's talk about what they are. The first one is the gift of observation. So I don't even know exactly. Okay, so I'm a person that I see a lot of shades of blue, okay, a lot of shades. And if you tell me something is cerulean, I have a very definite idea of exactly what that color is. If you tell me it's chartreuse, I have a very definite idea of that color. I had a beloved stepfather that couldn't tell the difference between green and blue. Okay, so we're not speaking the same language when it comes to color. Nothing against him, but I sure wouldn't hire him to advise me on my color palette for passion or fashion. And it might be clear that I don't hire anyone for that, but okay, so I am much more observant where colors are concerned than my stepfather was. Similarly, if you ask an animal, for example, to target a body part, and we might start our hands right next to their, cheeks, but we're going to be in contact with the dog. We're not going to say, "Can you touch here?" and then move our hand over here, because If the animal makes a little movement, like, did you mean in this direction? They'll get discouraged before they get all the way over here. Let's think about it. How many times have you seen your dog move like this? He doesn't know that. He's much more likely to go, what do you want me to touch? Okay. And make a big circle and come into your hand so he can see it as he approaches versus trying to move directly sideways to a hand he can't even see. Because right here, you're behind his peripheral vision. Okay. But if you take those hands and put them right here and you press in like so and come back halfway, when that animal flows back in, X, that's your right. You show me your left, X, that's your left. Now I'm not going to pulse in this time. I'm going to say, you show me right? Good. Show me left? Good. Now, those aren't big responses. And you're new to this. You got to get there. You got to get to the bus station, get ready to go up the steps to get on the bus. If you're going to train this animal and you're going, okay, is he trying to go right? Is he trying to go left? If that animal flicks their left ear when you've asked for left, you say, good. You're looking for that tiny expression of understanding or getting it. Okay? You're not waiting for the animal to, da da da, I will now go left. It's not like that at first. So you have to be prepared and observant. You have to be discerning. You have to be watching the other behaviors that are there also, the other events that are happening. So, I didn't prepare ahead of time with a good example. I saw a snake in my yard and he wasn't moving exactly right. And so I wasn't a venomous snake. It was a blue indigo snake. And I, stopped him and looked, and a dog had bitten this snake. So we went and got some betadine and some surgical tape, and we treated the snake and let him go on his way. I don't know for sure what happened, but we have a lot of snakes here. I hope the snake was fine. You have to recognize the difference between normal and abnormal. And I'll tell you another place where this happened. I was going out of a classroom and everybody had filed out. I was one of the last people. And as I went by one of my classmates, I said something like, have a great day or something like that. And he looked frozen. He's just staring straight ahead and didn't acknowledge me at all. And I knew in an instant something was really wrong. And I ran to alert the instructor. Turns out this classmate had type 1 diabetes and was in a diabetic coma. And everybody else went past him and didn't notice it. Later on, I shared a unique experience with him and another classmate. So by this time, I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm waiting to go march on the field with other people in the band. All of a sudden, I see this huge explosion in the sky, and it created all these rosettes like you see in fireworks. And they were huge, and they were deep purple and deep pink and deep orange. And they didn't fall down like fireworks did. They just stayed up there like these giant rosettes. And I start poking my friend next to me. Hey, look at that. What is that? Can you see what that is? And my friend's doing this. I just about had to get violent with him. I mean, when you're in a situation like that, all hands on deck. You need to look and see what it is. We need to talk about this. Finally, I gave up on this guy and I talked to the other guy next to me. He's the guy that I noticed that he had a coma problem and he's refusing to look up into the sky. It was really frustrating. I thought they would come over on the loudspeaker and say, well, this day we don't have the Goodyear blimp, but look at those firework explosions up and blah, blah, blah. They didn't say anything. Nobody acknowledged this stuff. The people in the crowd weren't going, oh, look, look. Just me. I was the only person. We go out on the field to march. We come back, everything has disappeared. Was I just imagining things? My father worked in nuclear missile design and nuclear missile testing. And I told him about this. I should have mentioned, I saw a lot of missiles go up in the sky when I was a kid. I saw a lot of launches. And so I recognized that this was a missile. And all of a sudden, as this missile is arcing across the sky, all three stages fired off simultaneously. Well, that's not how it happens. And when that happened, that's when all these rosettes suddenly appeared. And I already told you they were huge. They had very dark colors and they didn't fall down to the sky. And the missile just kind of sat up there, the three stages, 1, 2, 3, with a little bit of flame coming in out of the, I think it's the afterburner, they call it. Anyway, and then when I came back, everything was gone. So I am so lucky. I am so lucky that I had that father because I asked him, what the heck did I see? He said, let me check at work for you. The next night he came home and he said, they had a faulty missile that they launched at an Air Force base that had a faulty guidance system. So they needed to detonate it while it was high enough above the earth that it would burn up before it hit the atmosphere. In other words, you don't want it killing anybody or catching things on fire, when it crashes from space. So what I happened to catch was the moment when they detonated all three stages at once. And when they did that, it exploded the fuel tanks. And that exploded fuel froze instantaneously into billions of microscopic crystal mirrors. And, we were, let's say, here, and the sun had set a little bit ago, so it's here. Well, this missile is up here, and it still has, we can't see the sun. To us, it looks dark, but this missile has a direct line of sight to the sun. But the light was going through so much more atmosphere that just like sunrises and sunsets have red and gold and pink and purple, but during the middle of the day, you just see blue usually. Well, this had so much atmosphere that it was dark purple, dark orange, dark gold, dark pink. Perfectly logical. Now you may wonder why it didn't fall. Because it was high enough up that the effect of gravity was negligible, because, we're talking microscopic ice things, little crystals of ice, and there was no wind up there. However, it totally disappeared by the time I came back from marching, and the missile would fall and hopefully burn up in the atmosphere. But all those little crystals sublimated directly from ice into plasma. Okay, they had no pressure up there, and this was expected. So it was really great for me because I learned so much from that. I learned, first of all, I'm a credible witness. If I think I see something, I'm seeing something. Now, it could be that, it has to do with some kind of physiological thing that's unique to me, but it's happening. So in this case, my father was able to give me an absolutely logical, um, documented explanation. But what about these other people? What about the people that were right there with me that could look up and refuse to look up, that didn't see it? Not just my two friends, but the entire stadium. Sometime take a look at the descriptions of Columbus and Captain Cook getting to islands with natives that hadn't met them before. And one of the things that blew my mind is that the ships were right out in the harbor, but the people that were not used to seeing ships, the native inhabitants of the islands, did not recognize, did not acknowledge, did not see the little boats, the ships, whatever you want to call them, out in the harbor. I think it was for 3 days. And then they saw them. Now, they'd always been there, but it took people time to get their minds around something that was not normally part of their environment. I'm going to encourage you to be me in those situations and not these other people. If something is scary, if it makes you worry, if it doesn't fit into your worldview, welcome it with caution, observe it carefully. Write down whatever you need to write down, and then go study it and test it and get advice from people that are in that field, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to learn how to assess things in a relevant way, because you can't just trust that people know what they're doing. Okay? It's your wellness at risk, so you need to do the footwork. You can't depend on somebody else to say, oh, yeah, they passed my program. Maybe they passed their program 20 years ago and had a really traumatic brain injury in between, and they can't remember. You need to assess. Okay, so we talked about observe. We talked about assess. We talked a little bit about discern. Discern is where you actually see the differences, the nuances, the shades. Believe me, the devil is in the details. Always. Always. You need to learn that. You need to learn to recognize the details and the differences in them. I remember one very talented trainer was in a class, and he had done some very good work with this little dog. And then the dog just kind of befuddled him because she all of a sudden reacted to something. And he couldn't figure out what it was. And he was right there. But when you're there in the moment, you're busy. You're watching the dog. You're thinking about what you're doing. You're not your best observer when you're actually working in the moment. That's why it's really great for trainers to videotape their work and study that videotape. What he missed was that when he walked between the dog and the window, he cast a shadow which went over the dog's eyes, and she kind of went like that. So we were able to literally test that. I think we were doing a live session, as a matter of fact. And so we saw it happen. And then I said, can you test that? So he went and did it again, and he was able to do cycles so that she could, get used to this change that she didn't understand. It was a very small, subtle change, but it put her ill at ease. So discernment. The fourth thing I want to talk to you about is recognizing patterns. And do you see how all these things are a little bit intertwined? For example, if you're going to recognize If you're going to discern the difference, you need to recognize the regular pattern and then the other pattern. So with discernment, a lot of times you got to look really small at little details, at little instants in space or time. But maybe you also have to look at bigger stretches of space and time. So you've got to zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. Even people that work diligently to develop their ability to observe can have surprising lapses. I remember that they were about to put in a very nice sculpture of the gray seals at the National Zoo. And the artist had kind of put the sculpture up on exhibit for us to see, but it hadn't been made permanent yet. And I saw it and I was really disappointed. Now, the animals look great. You know, their bodies were great, their colors were great, but she didn't give them any ears and she didn't give them any whiskers. And I was like, wow, they have these beautiful eyes that are very complex, and they have this beautiful array of whiskers and these amazing auricles. And there's nothing else that you have to keep track of. They don't have hairdos. They don't have horns. They don't have, bumps, weird color. Well, they do have spots, but anyway. So the artist is kind of trying to get me to approve it. And I said, well, I don't mean to be critical, but did you mean to leave off the ears and the whiskers? And the artist was absolutely shocked. No, I didn't mean to leave that off. Can you point it out what you're talking about? Well, because I'm observant, because my grandmother taught me to draw, because I adore my gray seals, for all of those reasons, I was able to tell her their eyes are going to be about a third of the way from their bridge of their nose, and then the eye, and then another 2/3 to get to their auricles for their ears. And their whiskers, they're going to have 5 rows of whiskers. And if I recall, each row had 5 whiskers also. Now, these whiskers, when they dry out, they curl. Okay? They go like this. And when they're wet in the sunlight, they look like those plastic broom straws. And she was elated because not only could I tell her what was missing, but I could tell her where it was and how many of them. And I told her about the 4 eyebrows. This is my beloved Selkie. You see her 4 eyebrows? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't really see the distance between her eye, but here's her bridge of her nose, and then her auricle is back here. Look at all these whiskers. And if you get a chance to study them, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Like I said, if I recall correctly, they have 5 whiskers in each row. And do you see those beautiful eyes? And this is Selkie when she was 40 years old, 43 years old. And her eyes are not as clear as they would have been when I first met her. But, I mean, gotta admit, that is a beautiful face. And she deserves to have her whiskers. So that artist was so great. She went and fixed that. And it was a great sculpture after that. You've got to know the patterns. You've got to observe with intention. Now, when you do that, everything becomes more interesting. If you start saying, well, are the, I can't think of the word now. the distances between the eyes and everything, are the relative distances, the spacing. I know there's a certain word for it and I can't think of it. All right, well, anyway, are they the same for sea lions as they are for seals? Are they the same for male seals as they are for females? What are the color differences? Are all the males darker colored and all the females lighter, or vice versa? And so, as you start asking yourself these questions about the animals, um, for example, people will get so guilty feeling because they leave their dog in a crate all day long while they're at work. And they think that is not fair to the dog. Well, guess what? Paul Loeb studied dogs. He was a New York City dog trainer, and he wrote some very nice little books, but it was in the 70s. He used closed circuit TV to videotape his client dogs. And he, along with some other researchers in other studies, found that dogs spend 95% of their time asleep anyway. So don't worry about it. Let them be in their crate and then come home and do marvelous things together. Because people sleep more than you think they will. Okay, the 4 things again: observation, discernment, assessment, pattern recognition. Go be the best trainer that you intend to be. Thank you for spending time with me. Please like and comment. See you later.